Yeah, it's mindset cafe, we all about that mindset. Gotta stay focused, never settle for less. It's all in your head, how you think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits. No negative vibes, only positive.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy Devin, and today we are joined by an awesome guest, Dr. Rob Leon. He is a professor of human resource development. He is a leadership expert and the co-founder of Black River Performance Management. With over 20 years of experience in leadership, in organizational development, and performance improvement, Rob has really dedicated his career to helping businesses create a work culture that really fuels the human spirit rather than drain it. So I don't want to dive too much into his story because I want him to be the author of that and really narrate that. But without further ado, Dr. Rob, thank you for taking your time out to, hop on and drop some knowledge today.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me here. I'm excited for this.
So I always like to start with, the backstory, right? What was your childhood like and what was that, journey?
That back, huh? Yep. I'm actually Canadian. And so I was born north of the border. I have now lived in the US longer than I've lived in Canada. But just a really, I would say, average family. And what I mean with that is middle class, parents working hard to try to do better for themselves and for the kids. Grew up playing hockey, grew up playing soccer. I think it's a given, right? If you're Canadian back then, you had to play hockey when you grew up as part of your rites of passage. But yeah, people ask at times, so tell me a little bit more, like, what were you like in high school and things like that? And I was like, I have to think about that. I was not voted the least likely to succeed, but I also wasn't voted the most likely to succeed. I'm just right in the middle of the bell curve. And school wasn't super easy for me, but I'm a hustler, like to push, like to drive. And so kind of created a nice little career out of, strategy. I tell people, if I didn't have a strategy, I wouldn't have made it anywhere. And that's what that's how I get through the day. That's how we build our business. That's how I balance right now working as a professor at a university as well as running a company. And so lots of balance, lots of flow, but also lots of grinding and just knowing the cycles and the routines so that I could show up every day as the best version of myself for my family and for other people I interact with.
No, definitely. So what did your parents do growing up?
Accountant and healthcare professional. So, okay. Yeah. So I had some introductions to some professional lines, but never. My dad, as an accountant, had his own accountancy on and off over the years, but outside of that, you talk about entrepreneurship at times, and that was just not a conversation at our dinner table.
No, and that's what interests me with a lot of entrepreneurs is like, what was that turning point? What was that mindset shift or that moment you're going to bet, you really essentially bet on yourself? For you, what was that moment in your journey? Because, having a PhD and everything, you went the college route, right? But yep. What was the moment you're like, I want to launch a business?
So there are moments before that were really important. And one of which was working in this economic development space at the universities I was with, trying to help companies get off the ground or relocate to certain destinations, things like that. And what I found that is with my academic prep, not in economic development and not in entrepreneurship, but I learned to read people and learn to read opportunity and diagnose situations. So I became skilled at determining when someone would come with a pitch or an idea, the vitality or the likelihood of success behind it. And so that became a valuable tool as I moved forward and started to build systems to integrate them and work with communities and things like that. But I remember having an issue with my car, and this is older. I was just after I finished my PhD, and just not having much cash to get it fixed. And something that made me pause was, look, the person I'm going to bring this car to went to school for maybe a year or 2 years. They learned it. They learned the issue. and they're going to fix it, just like the surgeon that fixed my shoulder learned it and fixed it, you know? So I was like, everything's learned. Like we're programmed, we're built in with overarchingly the tools and the capabilities to do a lot of great things in life. It's usually us that gets in our way. And to me, that was a real turning moment at that point to say, look, I'm in charge of my destiny to a certain extent, right? Like, and I can do some great things. And especially being in those economic development circles, looking around at these other startups and things like that, businesses and moms and pops, people were just going off of passion, and they didn't even necessarily have the know-how to write a business plan, how to build a business, how to lead a team, things like that. So I'm like, I got a couple things going for me here, so maybe I should dip my toe in the water. And so we started to do some things, indoor cycling studio. That was kind of a boutique thing, which was a lot of fun and cool people, as you know, right, in your environment. So, and then we real estate, and then COVID did a number on a number of our businesses. And then our consultancy took off during COVID. And so it was one of those things that I was like, I don't want to fix bikes anymore. I'm just going to go and train and consult and do this. I miss the world we had, the team we had, and the community we had with some of these other businesses. But I just kind of dove into the consulting stuff full time.
Something you said something really interesting earlier, and I want to kind of dive into it. Right, you said you were able to read opportunities and see the validity in opportunities. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So one of the challenges people experience is this kind of concept of attribution error or misjudgment, and they misattribute factors to variables that aren't necessarily accurate or true. Right. So I'll give you an example that I shared with someone earlier today. You could have a leader that says, look, I'm good. I don't need help. I got it all under control. My team's awesome. Well, just because the team's awesome and it seems like things are flowing really well doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you as that particular leader. It could just be the dynamics of the team, the culture, the things that are occurring there. So ultimately, your team's one poor hire away from potentially falling apart, right? And so people kind of misinterpret or misappreciate what they have as a service line, right? So entrepreneurs are often passionate about a kind of a project, a topic, a tool, a widget, whatever you want to say. And it's not uncommon for them to inaccurately in their mind represent the appeal of something, right? Let's take wedding photographers. It's just a simple example. Lots of money to be made there, or at least there was before cell phones came around, right? But when you think about it, if that's your service line, how many repeat customers are you going to have on that service line, right? Whereas if it's a fitness facility and we're trying to drive fitness goals and stuff, people are going to come back day in and day out to build a capacity. And if they stop, they're going to come back, or they might not, they might go somewhere else. But there's a routine of how people live that integrates this consumership into their life. Whereas going back to that, the photography group, how many times are you going to get married? And, you know, I've been married more than once, and I didn't hire a photographer the second time. Let me tell you that, right? Like, so it's one of those things that people sometimes move into things with an unrealistic expectation of the impact their product can have. And I remember us even sitting down and doing the projections on the cycling studio. And this is what a day pass will bring us versus membership and all these things. And if you're not careful and you don't check yourself, it could really grow and become something that it's really not likely to become. So it's good to surround yourself with people that can ask questions. It's good to be kind of growth minded and be open minded to the fact that, look, Devin, I want to do this. Let's just say I want to go back into the market with the same thing again with this boutique company, and you have all this experience in your industry. You'd be a great sounding board for me, right? And so I see a lot of people actually insulate themselves with yesers or yes men or people that aren't comfortable to disagree, and then that's where we see people get into trouble with some of these startup problems and business launches.
No, definitely, and it is people will look at it as, you know, through the lens they want to look at it, and they only look at like this endless opportunity, I'll say.
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
and they don't take into consideration some of the limiting factors or some of the, hey, you need to consider these things. And I mean, it's like, for example, when you move out of your house for the first time, you're a teenager and you got to move out. Well, you didn't realize that, not only do you pay for water power, but you pay for, the trash trucks, to come pick up the trash. And you're like, wait, why do I pay for that?
Yeah. That's so you had a realization one day, didn't you?
Exactly. It's not a flat rate to move out. All of a sudden it's all these little hidden things that you're like, oh, like I'm going to be eating top ramen and protein powder for next month,
Yeah, exactly.
That is literally a true story. So
you get hungry that way, don't you? You hustle.
Oh yeah, 100%. That was my first life lesson. Moved out and I was like, well, I get protein from my uncle has, works for a supplement company. I get protein for half off. And I was like, top ramen's $1. I was like, we're gonna make it work.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, it's so interesting though, because I do want to dive into the whole, you had a few businesses and then obviously the unfortunate event of COVID and you had to shut some of them down. Luckily, one of them turned out to flourish. But what was that mindset or that mental kind of time frame when you actually had to close down businesses due to those circumstances?
There are a couple things that are occurring simultaneously. So the cycling studio straight up was cannibalized by COVID, right? We just didn't know what the end was. We didn't feel comfortable having people in that tight of a location breathing all over each other, right? But we had this, what I'd call micro restaurant. What I also learned during that time, that then I moved out of that at the same time, was that owner operated as much. Where do your resources go when you're not owner operated, right? And then how does that person embody your vision and deliver on your vision? And that was a huge learning experience for me, that I couldn't just because we had cash available to do that, we could pay the person, but we couldn't help them think like us. And so that was a real learning moment there too. And so there were all these different mixed emotions going on at the same time, because some things were market conditions, some things were beyond our control altogether. And so it was, if I'm going to protect my sanity and my well-being, because I was spending a lot of time at that time, we had if you had the consultancy, 4 different businesses at that same time. And I was still teaching at the university. So I'd leave work, go to the restaurant, leave work, go from there, teach a class in the spin studio, right? Like just all these things. And they were all within the same ecosystem. We had a co-working business too there that was a part of this. But it was just like, I got to figure out what do I need to do to prioritize my energy so I can be better for the businesses I'm focusing on and the people in my life outside that. Because if we had a successful business at the end of the day and I was a jerk to everyone at home, that wasn't worth it either. That wasn't the answer. So it was a lot going on, but testament to what I started with, it was important to step back and have people in my life to kind of unpack these things with, to give me some, redirection, some perspective, because just like the clients I work with, I was too close to a bunch of it to know, I could navigate the path, but I really couldn't see what the options were and the liabilities were necessarily.
No, and that's huge. Like, it almost goes into like with you have walking the walk, right? You've walked the walk, and that's the biggest aspect. Is there's so many coaches, there's so many consultants that read a book, got a certificate or whatever, and that they've never gone through that journey. And there's more to it than just numbers on paper. There's more, like there's the mindset of it. There's the actual emotional ties that go to it. And you have living that. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on, because I typically don't bring on, I try not to bring on coaches and consultants, because there's so many of this gray area. But after us meeting and talking, it's like, you're one of the few that has lived the life and is now, helping others try to live that life as well, which is huge. So what I want to know is, you've launched, I mean, you mentioned the micro restaurant, and you've launched several ventures in different industries, restaurant,
Yeah.
cycling studio, even to a nonprofit, I believe, right?
Yep.
So
I forgot about that one.
so what are some of the biggest takeaways about starting and sustaining a business that you could give someone?
Gosh. So the growth mindset piece is super important, right? So as a small business owner, it's tempting to run everything yourself. But at the same time, there's opportunities that you can grow into certain functions. And then I'm not proposing like I could be a marketing expert and I could just learn that, because I clearly can't. I have to hire someone because it takes too much time. But just like the fixing the engine thing, there's things that I can learn that would actually serve my business better. So for example, I'm super introverted, but I've learned the skills and developed the capacity to have more of an extroverted personality, to connect with people, to whether that's to promote products, drive sales, just do different things. And if I didn't possess that, if I didn't develop that, how would I get the message out about the work I'm doing or the product line I'm selling, right? So the mindset piece is huge of that. Let's see, what else is big? The opportunity recognition piece is really important. Talk to people that are in similar industries, similar space, get that feedback, get some coaching, maybe if you need that. And coaching can be expensive, but for certain groups, you just trade service lines in terms of what you're going to do to help the other person, to help you, things like that. To me, a lot of my grounding was tied to people in my network at that time, and my guys, and they showed up and they helped. And like I said, they provided perspective that I needed, because we had a relationship that was open enough to say, look, I need to know if you guys think this is a bad idea, because you're my litmus test of what's going on out there in the market. And so I need to hear from you first, as opposed to learning the hard way. So surrounding yourself by good people. So those are a couple things that come to mind right off the bat. And it's not for everyone, right? Like it's being a business owner can be really tough and really grueling, and your time's worth something. And so you have to balance that in terms of what is my time worth versus what I'm potentially not selling or doing, or potentially giving away to grow my business. And so there's a dance there, and every industry is different as it relates to that. But, as a consultant, I've come in to help microbrews, restaurants, healthcare, beauty and wellness, like all these different industries kind of navigate some of that space, especially around how humans behave. So getting a little perspective in that area is helpful.
No, definitely. And like every business industry has their own niche and their own, way to do things and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it boils down to business as business. And it's take the same lesson and, tweak it to fit the mold. But I think it's so huge what you mentioned about time, how your time is worth something. And that's the one thing that I'm like, it isn't for everyone, with the mental drain and realizing, that even like in my position now, I tell people, they're like, oh, it's so cool. You're running this company. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not, like, my team tells me what they need. And now I go figure out how to make that a possibility or a reality, right? I'm just a problem solver now. Like I focus on the growth and, solving fires, right? Yeah. But the timeline for each person necessarily isn't the same. And this is where I think it's interesting, because it's like, yes, your time is worth something, but also if you are expecting that payment straight out the gate, there is a give you need to be willing to make so that you can get paid that, at a certain time.
Yeah, if I can speak to that a bit, because of the consulting world I work in, I've had a number of new consultants referred on to me for kind of feedback and perspective taking. And, to your point there, like there's a pipeline process here, right? There's this pipeline process of building clientele. And if you have something that people need immediately and you're the first in town or you're the best in town, not so much of a problem. Most of us aren't the first or the best, right? And so when we're coming in, we have to grow to be the best to take our market share. But I've given away lots of time, lots of services, and I still do today. Like you could go on and sign up on my Calendly and just get connected, no problem, no charge. But the other side of it is I'm seeing what the fruits of that labor is bearing. And so I'm constantly monitoring what's our return on this giveaway essentially. And it was the return was a lot lower in the front end, but it built momentum and recognition. And so that helped. And I was fortunate in the sense of I had a day job too, right? So it's, when people are talking about startups and getting going and launching, especially a smaller business, and they don't need to be in a service location all day. They can do some of the work virtually, things like that. I'm a really strong proponent of moonlighting to build your capacity to build that pipeline for a year while you already have your stability in that day job. If you need income, right? If you need stability, if you need healthcare, until you can start to snowball that into, repeat or constant new client activity.
No, definitely. And like to aid what you're saying also, because I think this is such a crucial topic, because you can't be, even if you are the first in town, you're not the best in town yet. Right. Like just because you're the first doesn't mean you're the best. Like no one knows, like you becoming the best means that you've built up clientele or you've built up a customer list and so forth. So that takes time. Like, for example, I mean, I'm in the gym industry, the fitness industry, you were in the cycling studio. It's like, even though you might get customers on day one, right, that doesn't mean your overhead and everything is, paid off. Like people think that entrepreneurship is you build it, they will come and you're a millionaire right out the gate. And that's not how this game works.
Still like ramen, right?
There is
still a ramen and protein powder.
Luckily I'm out of that phase and everything, but there is a time frame that's why it's valuable to others to become an entrepreneur, because they see what the end looks like, but they don't have a view of that middle, basically you going through that pipeline to get out on the other side. Right. And it's like, that people don't understand that sometimes like it might be a month, it might be 6 months, it might be 3 years for you to get out on that other end, because you're in your own way a lot of the times. Right. I didn't hire a mentor for our first, year and a half in business. And that was me getting in my own way, thinking that I needed to solve every problem because I thought entrepreneurs did it themselves. Right. And that was a huge learning curve. That was ego getting put aside and, having the humility to ask for help. And that's one of the biggest things. And that's where I want to kind of dive into the next thing that you talk about is, your work should fuel your human spirit and not drain it.
Yeah. So when you were talking there, one of the things I was thinking of that was really coming to mind is, what's your time frame to measure your success here? Right? Because at what point is all the money I invested a sunk cost and it's time to exit, right? And the other thing that occurred to me is that markets shift really fast. You could be the first. I remember moving to these small communities. There was no real gym other than, say, the campus gym, and people didn't want to go to it. So any time would pop up. And then it wasn't long until finally someone as an entrepreneur built their own gym. And they were able to offer a greater service line, greater customer experience, stuff like that. So that pre-baked gym model just kind of became flat and old, right? So, I think you have to know when enough is enough to preserve, yourself. Like, you got to protect yourself. It's stressful, and we all handle stress differently. But it usually leads us to less desirable spaces, right? Whether that's related to food or drinking or body dysmorphia in terms of the stress is affecting us in different areas, damaging relationships, stuff like that. So what is this initiative worth versus what's of value to you. And that's one of the things I really try to focus on. And that's the same thing we focus on with our clients in all sorts of industries is what is that on the user level as an employee, what is that experience like for you as, let's just take your team, right? For your team members, do they feel exhausted and run down at the end of the day and they're coming back because it's a job and they need to feed themselves or their family? Or are they leaving with their tank half full still? And they're going home, they're being present with their family, their friends. They're getting to the gym themselves to get a workout in because that's important to them, things like that. So to me, it's really important for us to take stake of all these factors as we're trying to run these companies.
No, definitely. I mean, I mean, for us, we do try to fill our employees' cups, right? But that in a way of, teaching and motivating and so forth, and giving them extra tools that they can not only use here, but other places and later in life, if they so please. But it's truly just caring about the employee instead of thinking of them just as a workhorse, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to kind of ask my next question is as a leader, you're trying to fill your cup. You're trying to build a business. You're trying to do all this for you. But what are some of the biggest mistakes, whether it's with employees or just in business in general? What are some of the biggest mistakes leaders make with leadership, that drain that motivation and productivity from their employees?
I think sometimes they believe that the people that work with them believe in the same values or the prospects or the potential of the organization, especially for like a small business or startup ownership thing. I know my team, they're great, but they don't have the same vested interest in this company as I do. And that's one of the things to forget. But just as I say that, the other side of the coin is don't think that you love this necessarily more than anyone else too, because they could very well show up and give it love in a different direction, in a different way. And you need that perspective so that you service your clients, your customers, your patrons very well. So that's one of the things that comes to mind for me. Anything else related to that you want to jump into?
No, well, yes, but like I do want to say I do agree with what you're saying, and this was one of those realizations in talks I had with my business partner was that him not coming from an entrepreneurial background and us having that talk in the beginning with our first few employees, because he was almost the bottleneck in terms of instead of teaching an employee how to do something, he was like, I could do it better, or they're not going to care about it as much as me. And I was like, dude, you can't think about it that way. Like, you got to let them flourish and essentially pour water on the seed so it can grow. I was like, but at the same time, like, you never know what other people have going on outside, right? So the way I think about it is like, what if someone didn't have a father figure? Right. And now they're coming into work and you're coaching them, you're motivating them, you're giving them praise, but you're giving them correction as well. And now they're actually they see the vision of the business and everything, but they're tied into this because this is their family. Yeah,
that's a great point. One of the things that's easy to forget is what does it mean to be human, you in and of yourself, right? And so as the owner, if I could just think back when I was an employee, I don't like being yelled at. I don't like tough talked or just pull yourself up by the bootstraps type of thing. Like, there's a level of compassion and support and reciprocation that was important for me. I would be making a mistake if I didn't recognize that that's actually a human condition in many instances, and that our people need an element of that. I might be busy, but I also need to know how to pause and check in with Devin to make sure Devin's doing great, make sure Devin has what he needs so that Devin feels comfortable to ask questions, comfortable to come to me for perspective, for resources, or comfortable to come to me when you make a mistake, right? Like, because it's a growing period for a lot of people. And so I really see, to your point, like the seeds in the water, we're in this cult of, if we're doing this well, we're building and leading a business, but we're also cultivating people to be better humans and to go home and love better and support better and be better community members. And so we're concurrently building a community. And that's how I like to talk about it. In our organization, we're building a community because communities members look out for each other. This is not a transactional experience where everyone's just coming in, punching in, getting their own, and moving on out to go home. That people have some basic psychological needs, and one of them is connection, and they need it somewhere. And I say this, and it's tough to hear, but just because you're married doesn't necessarily mean you have the connection you need back home.
Yep.
And so the workplace performs a very important role in socialization and giving people connection. And so it's something that it might not be important to me as maybe an introvert or as a person that just wants to hustle and grind, but that can't be the case for my team. Another way I talk about something like this is goal setting. I'm not, whatever my makeup is, whatever my design is I'm not a very specific goal setter. I kind of I see the targets and I really work to achieve targets, but I'm not really measuring things by goals and checkpoints and milestones. But it doesn't mean that my team doesn't need that, right? So one of the things we do with organizations is we bring them through goal setting work, and why setting goals on tasks and jobs and outcomes are important, because they provide a foundation for clarity between the individual and the leader. Well, just because I don't need them doesn't mean my staff wouldn't benefit from it. So it's one of those other examples. So I think about it in terms of the entrepreneurs listening, like, how are you accurately and clearly communicating with your team so that they truly understand what it is that you want accomplished, right? Because no one can read my mind, no one can read your mind. And and when a younger version of myself remembers, being frustrated with, why can't they just figure this out? It's so clear, you know what I mean? And it's not, because they see the world through their own lenses and their own experiences. And so I got to find a system to help bring them along with me.
Right. And then realizing that system has to be adaptable as well, because each person learns different and everything like that. But one of the things I learned as well, through my entrepreneurial experience is like almost what Jocko Willings talks about in his book, the dichotomy of leadership. It's like when you view it, you're like, if your team is struggling, you could blame them for struggling, or you can reflect and be like, man, maybe I didn't give them all the tools that they needed. Right. And so one of the biggest things I do is ask, hey, this was supposed to be done this way. Maybe I didn't explain it well enough, or maybe I didn't, teach you how to do that. Like, let's go over it, or just asking them like, hey, what do I need to do? Or what can I help you with to help improve, your job, improve your, what's it called? Your ease of work, right? How can I make your life easier? And let them tell you, right? Because once you ask, a lot more people are willing to tell you. A lot of people are scared, employees are scared to ask for help. But if you're asking them, what can I do to help you? Then they're more willing to give you the raw meat that's on the floor. Like, hey, this is what life is really like down here, right? And so my next question is, you've worked with, some startups as well as some Fortune 500 companies. And I wanted to kind of see, is there common traits between the successful leaders of the startups and the Fortune 500, or is it kind of like night and day different?
The thing that's really consistent is that connection element, that the team feels like they have a connection with their leader, so that they can ask questions. And the other piece that plays into this is the concept of psychological safety, that people are living and working in an environment that, I guess they're not living in the environment. They're existing in this work environment where their questions are appreciated. They're valued. They're not afraid of retaliation or retribution or being marginalized, right? And so that is true in every organization and every size when I see things successful. Another piece of this is, and if this is a takeaway for anyone listening, I think the most important leadership attribute, whether it's your startup, it's your Fortune 500, whatever it is consistency. To be consistent. Because what happens is your team now knows how you're going to react to good news and bad. And that is empowering in and of itself, right? So you mentioned asking questions. Well, one of the big challenges with asking questions is sometimes we don't have the language, or we don't know what we don't know. So, I know I'm not hitting the mark, but I don't really know what I need help with, right? And so So there's a lot of self-imposed pressure because they don't want to disappoint the boss because they're afraid of how things might turn out. Well, when we have consistent leaders, we actually have a level of accuracy. We know how they're going to behave, good news or bad. And then the second point of it is that when you have culture on your side, when it's high quality, it's a lot easier for people to say, hey, boss man, I messed up. I need some help here. Or sorry, team, I let you down. And they hold accountability to each other, not just to the person that's cutting the paycheck.
No, definitely. And I think sometimes even as business owners, we get scared to ask questions or ask what they need help with because we don't want to know the fires. We don't want to, and we want to think that the way we did it the first time is the best way. And we're scared of what the real answer is. Right. And so it's almost taking that humility to realize that you probably didn't build it the best way the first time. And that doesn't mean that you can't improve. So you just got to, ask. But I wanted to go into a funny topic, or a funny, I guess, aspect. The way you word it is you talk about give me growers, not showers. Can you explain that philosophy a little bit? And
Yeah. We should probably put some context to this, right? Because I know what everyone else is thinking right now. So I was doing a CEO retreat in the mountains, and I was giving a spiel. And I was kind of on my soapbox, and I said, give me growers, not showers. And the room just went silent. I had a couple people blush, and then other people just started to grin, right? So what we're talking about there, and this is from the blog that's on the Black River website, right? That it's talking about mindset. I want people that are open-minded, growth mindset. I don't need people that want to show me how smart they are or how important they are. There's an element of humility and trainability that's super important to me. If you're curious, come along for the ride. I'll take you with me. If you know it all, and even if you're a potential client, I don't want to work with you if you know it all. My best clients are actually, we call them partners, and they approach me saying, hey, I know my craft. I know my industry. Let's just take you as an example. This health and wellness industry, and I have actually a client here in town that has both of those, and they know their stuff. They don't need me to help them with floor plan and flow and stuff like that, but they need help creating a better environment for their team. They need help hiring better talent, onboarding talent according to the culture they espouse to, right? These things and these are the best relationships. It's kind of like having a dance partner that just moves with you because they look to you for advice. They look to you for support. They really are forthcoming with their limitations and overextensions, their obstacles. And it's a real nice fluid conversation going back and forth, and trust grows really nicely.
No, I like it. And honestly, I'm surprised the room was silent because I would have been laughing.
They were a little off guard.
Yeah, maybe I'm just a little childish, but if you had said that, I would have cracked up. That's funny. But I love the meaning behind it and everything like that. And because I'm a huge analogy person, and I love like the symbolisms and stuff. And when you can catch someone off guard with that, then everyone's like,
a little innuendo doesn't hurt too, right?
Exactly. And those are the best. So I love that. I had to ask.
That's great.
So going into, the growers and the showers, right? Mm-hmm. With businesses, right? Balancing individual development, right? From a team level in relation to basically company performance, right? How does basically building an individual or pouring into an individual, whether it's sending to retreats or so forth, how can that affect company performance and the goals?
Right. So we look at things at the individual level, the team level, and then the organizational level. And when we work with organizations, we have to be mindful of what those needs are at each of those levels so that we build our strategy to account for that. Because I could build corporate or organizational goals and ambitions, but if I don't consider, and this is one of the problems with a lot of strategic planning processes, they happen in kind of in isolation with people at the top of the food chain, and they don't necessarily realize that there's inputs, there's people, there's resources that are going to affect the efficacy of the work that goes into that. And so it's important that we actually handle these at each level. So for at that base level, what is the culture you're trying to work to establish? And what is the relationship between what we're doing to individual needs in terms of, this is a job. Like, as the owner, I'm super invested. These are people that aren't the owners. And I got to recognize that for what it's worth. It doesn't mean they wouldn't, do anything they can to support the organization. But at the same time, I have to be a little bit more mindful that what am I trying to do with them? And am I taking liberties of their time and energy? And am I sending them home run down as opposed to being healthy and happy? So we start at the individual / team level to start to begin to establish some vocabulary, some understanding of behaviors, performance, personality, ambitions, things like that. So like even something as simple as a values activity. I think there's a lot of value in breaking the ice in your organization by integrating a values activity. So your people could share with each other what their top 3, 4, 5 values are. But then we roll that into the team. What's our team values? Because what they're trying to do is starting to establish some expectations and pieces that they could land on and lean on as a team as sort of guiding principles for practice. And then that moves on up into some of the organizational pieces. And so there are things that we need to do. We need to help people at an individual level with emotional intelligence. It's not something that we're born possessing. And it's a super important skill that has great returns on that investment. So if we can cultivate that in our team collectively, we're not sending them off by themselves to learn this. Let's do this as a group. Let's do this as a team. We're in this together. We're starting to establish a base of baseline conversation, right? Because one of the things we have to be mindful of, language is one of our biggest limiting factors. So if we just took a team of 10 and we said, what's your definition? And I use this term all the time, motivation. You get 10 different definitions. There's going to be some overlap, but let's just start there. Like if we can't agree on that necessarily, how do we agree on anything else? And so what we try to do is build a foundation of what is it that we mean when we talk about motivation, emotional intelligence, communication tactics, strategies, behavioral preferences, things like that. So now I have a better understanding of myself. So I'm increasing self-awareness, but as a part of that journey, I'm cultivating social awareness. I'm having an understanding of what my behaviors have impact on outside of myself and starting to realize that, whoa, I don't live in a vacuum. I can't just say whatever I want to say, or I'm not the only one that has a bad day, that other people around me are. And so how am I showing up for them once I take care of myself? So it's scaffolding and it's building into the team-based levels. Our goal is that when we leave the organization, that they actually are done with us and that they're team coaching around these principles and concepts that we integrate so that they're keeping it alive, because we want every expense to actually be an investment of those funds, so that team's getting what they need out of it. And so, yes, individual level, team level, organizational level. But I'll tell you one thing I do have an issue with, and I talk to groups about this, is what's your level of commitment to professional development funds for team members? And a lot of people kind of look at me kind of, what do you mean? I'm like, well, are you sending people to conferences? Are you sending people to trade shows? Where are you sending people? Because there's a sticker price to that, right? It might be $5,000 to go to Vegas for a week, right? And so have you determined what that value is for your organization? Because if we've set aside, say, 10 people, a budget for 10 people at $5,000 each or $2,000 each, let's just use 5, it's $50,000 of an investment there. What is that return on that investment? Sometimes we just have to be there, right? We have to be there to learn what's going on in the industry. We have to it's our mechanism to bring information back. But sometimes we send people with the belief that they're going to bring something back that never gets brought back because they only heard about it in a 45-minute session maybe, or they might come back with good information, but I can't, or I'm not as a leader adjusting their workflow to integrate the new idea, right? So if you think about it in terms of launching a new service line and they're already doing two people's jobs, how are they going to integrate that into their job? So one of the things we talk about is, let's look at that budget and determine what's a value out of it. And if it's nothing more than I want them to have a good experience and feel valued, that's worth something. That's a decision the organization gets to make. But the other side of it is, could we actually scale that back, maybe protect, say, 30,000 to do a team and organizational investment that's on site? Or can we take those funds and take your entire leadership team down to, Southern California at a retreat center or something? You know what I mean? Like, so being very purposeful of how we spend those funds as it relates to development will get us much closer to the outcomes we're hoping to accomplish.
No, I honestly, I love that. And so, I mean, the final question before the main question, right? Okay. And the question really goes into, we don't live in a vacuum, and everything that you're saying. And so I want to get your take on this too, because I have a business partner, right? But I also have a wife. My business partner has a wife. And so what is, I guess I want to say, like, how do you balance with all your business ventures with your wife, and, you guys doing so much, what is the secret to balancing work, your guys' marriage, your guys' personal lives, both as, you guys being business partners, but then individually?
Yeah. So we have a couple things. We have a level of maturity in our relationship that I never had when I was younger, right? But part of that is because we call ourselves do-overs. Like, we're remarried. Like, we were married to other people before. It didn't work out for a variety of reasons. We took cues and did the self-work associated with that. What was my role in a lot of this stuff? But I'll tell you, we do work in personality and behavioral areas. So we'll run diagnostics and assessments on people. If we didn't have that background, I don't think we'd be, despite our wisdom today, we wouldn't be together. Our styles are so different that it would be easy to let our emotions run away with how we feel the other person's being. And I know I can be really like nitpicky and critical, but that's part of my wiring, right? I'm also super detail oriented in a positive way, and that brings value to us. But it's easy to see how, if we didn't have this understanding of each other and the tools to learn how to communicate about these things and work through these things together, we would have just hung up the sign and close shop and went our own separate ways, because we still wouldn't have been able to connect in a manner that we needed to connect. So for us, we have that framework, we have that tool. We actually do this with people. We do family retreats, we do couples retreats, we do couples things like this on Zoom to help them understand and to smooth over areas and build that self-awareness as well as awareness of each other. Mm-hmm. But the other piece that I think is super important, two other things, if I can. One, we realize we can't fill each other's cups all the way. Mm-hmm. She needs her friends and I need my things in my life, right? And so we're not pretending that we are each other's everything. We are each other's a lot, and it's been a lot of fun. But she needs to go out and be with her girlfriends. I need to go out and walk the rivers with my friends and do my fishing and hiking and stuff like that. And then, so we really embrace the fact that we need other people in our lives to help us feel whole. The last thing we have, and we have this agreement, and actually you mentioned growers and showers. If you go back to the blog page, there's one that says, did that feedback sting? You have 24 hours to get over it. And all those blogs are kind of light, tongue-in-cheek, kind of fun reads. But what we have this agreement that, we can only be pissed off for 24 hours. But what we do is, because what we recognize is, if you're not familiar with the concept of emotion contagion, it's just like a contagious cold or flu. I could pick it up from someone else, right? And so if I come in just like you, if you go into the office one day and you're pissed off because you got cut off in traffic and then things just kept falling apart on your way in, that energy is going to follow you into the facility, right? And your people are going to pick it up right away. And they could have all been happy and joyous and good mood. And then all of a sudden, the energy of the group and the place just sucks, right? Emotion contagion. Well, we have that in our households. I come home from work really pissed off one day. She and I hate it. I hate how this happens. I come home, she's so happy to see me, and I'm an ass. Like I'm totally hijacked by some emotional event. And then before I know it, she's pissed off and down and, ticked off about it. And that's not fair to her. So what we've done is we've done this thing that, I come in the front door and I'm ticked off or I just not feeling it. And so she asks how I'm doing, and I tell her I'm not doing well. And so a little tongue in cheek, she says, well, you have 24 hours to get over it. And with a smile, a hug, and then we go our separate ways. And what we know is that if I want to talk about it, she'll sit down and talk with me. But sometimes I just need to go sit on the deck and let it pass through me. And then she goes on to do a project or maybe start dinner or something. And this is vice versa. We both do it. But what we found in doing this is that once we've acknowledged it with each other and said, essentially, you have 24 hours to get over this, we're giving each other permission to sit in the suck. And it's actually amazing how quickly we move back out of that. So the idea is that in 24 hours from now, you've moved through it. It's temporary. It's not the end of the world. And so that's been a really powerful piece for us to have open, honest conversations with each other and to recognize that we're not the same people. And she might not be having a good day and I might be, but it's okay. We'll support each other, but also stay away from each other a little bit.
No, honestly, I love that. That's so powerful too. I mean, not just being business partners, but being, even if, I know I'm not easy to be married to with my wife, right? And it's not that, I'm difficult or anything like that, but like being married to an entrepreneur, let alone both you guys being entrepreneurs, it is a life, for a spouse that is also not meant for everyone. Right. And
exactly.
And we've learned to mature through certain things that we have different, processes as well, but you learn as you go. But the biggest thing is communication, right? And that doesn't mean you need to sit there and talk it out, because I'm not a talker, right? And so for us, it was one of those things where I need to let her know, like, I just need to go work out or go do something. Like I need to just be in my own head for a minute, and then I'm good to go. And for her, it was like, I just need a vent or whatever. And I do not want a solution, because I always go to solutions. Right. And then all of a sudden I'm the one getting in trouble. And I was like, I don't understand why I'm in trouble. You had a problem. I'm giving you solutions. And it's like, so
you're not reading between the lines here very well, right?
Exactly. I'm like, this is the easy solution. Just do this, and this, and it's solved. And she was like, you don't get it. And I was like, now I don't. But that is so crucial. And now for the big question, right? That question is, and I will preface this by saying it is not a tombstone.
Okay.
Right. Even though I say that, people still give me sometimes a tombstone answer, and we have to do this over again. So this is the Rob Leon legacy wall, right? And that legacy, not meaning anything connotating to legacy. This is just essentially a quote wall, right? What is the one quote or message that you would leave for the up and coming generations that you've learned along your life's journey?
Wow. That's a tough one. There's so many things, but service to others is huge. And, I think about in terms of what do I hope actually, you said the tombstone type of thing. I think about it's also like that. Like, what is the impact I want to have left on others? And he brought us together and he was there for us. And if I could kind of unpack that backwards into, especially since my boys are in their teens, they're in high school, getting ready to go to college stuff. It's starting to help them understand what's important, what are priorities, and that some of the most rewarding things in life have to do with others being a part of that journey with you.
I love that.
Awesome.
And the reason I don't like to preface it or give it, that ahead of time is because it's that first thing. There's so many answers and everyone tries to create this super, proverb. And it's like, no, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Because that's what resonates and is deep with you. So I love that. And that is an amazing answer. Now, where can people connect with you and learn more about what you have going on and everything like that?
Cool. All right. So a couple different options. LinkedIn. So if you're on LinkedIn, that's where I kind of spend most of my time in terms of social. So first name Rob, last name Leon, as you mentioned, but it's actually spelled like lion, Lion. And so if you just throw me into the search, Rob Leon or Rob Lion or Robert, you'll find me that way. The other way to connect with us is through our website, blackriverpm.com. So the company's Black River Performance Management, but that's way too much of a mouthful for a URL. So Black River, the letter P for performance and the letter M for management.com. Once you get on there, you book a call if you want, request services if you want, or just check us out. Check out our blogs. Check out, if you go to blackriverpm.com/Rob, and this podcast will be in the feed there among some of the other media stuff I've done, as well as the blogs and keynotes and things like that. So yeah, connect, ask questions, love helping people. We work with every industry. As we tell people, we're industry agnostic, context specific. And that's what we focus on, is bringing value to the people in the organization that way.
I love it. And guys, all that will be in the show notes. It'll be in the video description. But I do want to say, make sure you guys share this episode with a friend. I know I got a lot out of it. You guys heard me engaging. Make sure you guys share this episode with a friend, because if you guys bring your circle up, you bring your team up, it helps bring you up as well, both on a personal level, but also from a team standpoint, whether it's your home team, your relationship at home, whether it's just your family, extended family team. Send this to someone that you care about, right? I'll leave it at that. But I want to say, Rob, thank you so much again for taking the time out of your day. I know I told you it'd only go 30 minutes, but it was just getting too good.
No,
and I didn't want to cut it short. So
awesome. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you.
Negative vibes, only positive thoughts, just in the game of life, mindset causes shots. Got my mind on the prize, I can't be distracted. I stay on my grind, no time to be slacking.